Welcome back to the deep dive. We are doing something a little different today.
Yeah, bit of a change up.
Usually we just take a stack of articles or a book and, rip through it. Today, we are actually looking at a specific artifact. We've got a slide deck in front of us titled The Performance Paradox. And let me tell you, looking at this opening slide, I wasn't sure if I was looking at a McKinsey presentation or a warning label.
It definitely has a hazard vibe to it. And that's pretty appropriate because this deck is a roadmap through a cultural minefield.
Right.
It's tackling two very contradictory truths that exist in the modern world,
Yeah.
Simultaneously. It's looking at gender, leadership, money. But not in the standard HR seminar way.
No, this is definitely not your standard diversity training. So let's set the scene for you listening. Imagine we're on slide 1. It's this stark split-screen image. On the left, you've got this gleaming modern glass skyscraper. It looks like it's just shooting straight up into the clouds. And then on the right, you have a classical marble pillar, like something from ancient Rome. But it's crumbling. It's cracking right down the middle.
In that image, it just sets the stage perfectly for the central tension we're going to explore.
Okay.
That skyscraper. That represents corporate growth, financial returns, the whole business case for what some people call the feminine advantage.
And the pillar.
But that crumbling pillar, that represents the critique. The argument that when institutions become too feminized, they actually lose their structural integrity, their ability to handle conflict, their commitment to, objective truth.
Wow. So on one hand, we've got sources telling us female leadership is basically a money printing machine.
Exactly.
And on the other, sources are warning that this same shift is eroding the very foundation of Western institutions.
That's the paradox. And our mission today is not to pick a side. We're doing a dialectical analysis here. We're going to look at these two opposing operating systems. Let's call them the masculine agency model and the feminine stakeholder model.
Yeah.
And just see what happens when they collide.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're moving to slide 2 now, and this is the executive summary. And the first thing that jumps out is this giant green arrow pointing straight up. It says, plus 66% ROIC.
Right, so let's start with the thesis. This is the business case.
Yeah.
The data here it's incredibly robust. We're looking at reports from Catalyst, McKinsey, the Credit Suisse Research Institute.
So the heavy hitters.
The heavy hitters, they've crunched the numbers on thousands of companies, and the verdict is clear. Companies with diverse boards and high female representation in leadership, they don't just do okay, they significantly outperform their competitors.
When you say significantly, that 66% figure, I mean, that's return on invested capital.
Yeah.
That's massive.
It's huge. That is not a rounding error.
No.
And they also found a 42% higher return on equity. So if you are just a cold-hearted capitalist who only cares about the stock price, the data says you should be hiring more women. The argument here is that the old masculine way of running things, command and control, rigid hierarchy, is actually leaving money on the table.
Which brings us right to slide 3. The slide asks why. And the visual here is interesting. On one side, you have a pyramid. That's the old way. And on the other, you have this network of connected dots. It looks almost like a constellation.
This is all about power over versus power with. The sources, they describe how female leaders tend to use a more transformative or participative leadership style.
Okay.
So instead of a general just barking orders from the top of the pyramid, you have a leader who is connecting the nodes, empowering employees, fostering open communication.
I saw a note in the research about a study of Indian businesses that really highlighted this.
Yes, that was a fascinating study. It found that female executives outperformed their male counterparts, specifically in talent development and equity. And in a complex economy, you aren't just managing widgets anymore. You're managing people. You're managing the flow of information. And that ability to nurture talent, to make people feel heard, that turns out to be a highly profitable asset because it stops bottlenecks.
So the feminine skill set, empathy, communication, seeing the whole picture, it isn't just a nice to have.
No, not at all. It's actually an efficiency engine. It breaks down silos. I mean, think about it. If you have a rigid hierarchy, the guy at the bottom might know something is wrong, but he's terrified to tell the guy at the top.
Sure.
In a participative network, that information travels freely, and that makes the company more agile, more innovative.
Okay, so that's the skyscraper. That's the big UP arrow. But now we need to look at the shifting ground underneath it all. Let's go to slide 4. We've got 2 logos here, a sharp green square labeled agency theory, and then these 2 intersecting circles labeled stakeholder theory. What are we looking at here?
This is the governance shift. And this really explains why the corporate world has embraced feminine leadership so aggressively.
For a long, long time, we operated under agency theory. This is the Milton Friedman era, right? The goal is to maximize shareholder return, period. The logic is competitive, efficiency-driven. It's very binary, win or lose.
That's the square, sharp edges.
Right. But we've moved almost entirely to stakeholder theory. That's the intersecting circles. The goal here isn't just profit, it's communal welfare. You have to take care of the employees, the community, the suppliers, the environment. The logic becomes relational, holistic.
And the connection here is that stakeholder theory just naturally favors that feminine operating system?
Exactly. I mean, if your job is to maximize profit at all costs, you want a killer in charge, right?
Yeah.
You want someone disagreeable who can fire 5,000 people to save the stock price and sleep like a baby.
Right.
But if your job is to balance the needs of 10 different community groups and manage employee mental health and navigate PR, you need empathy. You need that holistic view. So the system itself has evolved to select for these feminine traits. Okay, so far, this all sounds great. We're making more money, everyone feels heard, the circles are intersecting. But now we get to slide 5. And the tone of this whole deck just changes here. The background goes from white to this steel gray.
This is the antithesis.
The slide shows a seesaw. On one side, you have boxes labeled 49%, on the other, 51%. And the seesaw is tipping over. The header says, the great feminization and the tipping point.
This is where we get into the critique that's found in the sources. The argument is that there's a tipping point.
Okay, a tipping point.
Yeah. So having some feminine influence is beneficial. It adds that necessary empathy and communication.
Yeah.
But the critics argue that once an institution crosses a certain threshold, once it becomes culturally dominated by that feminine ethos, the fundamental values of the institution, they flip.
Flip from what to what?
Well, look at the before and after on the slide. The before is competition, hierarchy, objective rationality, and the freedom to fail.
And the after?
The after is empathy, safety, social cohesion, and emotional validation.
Those afterwards sound pretty nice, though. I mean, who doesn't want safety and validation?
They are nice. Of course they are.
They are.
And that's why they are seductive. But the sources argue that when you prioritize them above everything else, you lose the ability to find the truth. Slide 6 breaks this down even further. It's titled Truth versus Harmony. And this is where it gets really interesting for anyone who, works in an office. It contrasts the masculine dynamic with the feminine dynamic.
Right. So under the masculine dynamic, the slide says the priority is the best solution. It's unfettered truth. The method is open, direct conflict. The ethos is, as the slide puts it, slug it out and get a beer.
And we've all been in that meeting, right? You can have a screaming match about a strategy, call each other's ideas stupid, and then go out for drinks because it wasn't personal.
It was about the object.
It was about the object. It was about solving the problem.
But then you look at the feminine dynamic side.
The priority there shifts to social cohesion and consensus. The method is indirect conflict. And the ethos is reputation policing.
Reputation policing.
Yeah. And the danger highlighted here is that in a fully feminized dynamic, the outcome of the discussion, finding the truth, is often seen as less important than the fact that everyone felt included in the discussion.
So if stating a hard fact makes someone feel unsafe or excluded, the fact just gets suppressed.
That's the critique.
Yeah.
It leads to what the sources call institutional inconsistency. Feelings start to override objective facts because maintaining the harmony of the group becomes the highest virtue. So if you point out that a strategy is failing and that makes the team feel bad, you become the problem for pointing it out.
This bleeds right into slide 7, which is probably the most striking image in the whole deck. It's a light bulb, but it's wrapped in layers and layers of red tape and bubble wrap.
The innovation paradox, safetyism versus ambition, this is a critical point. Innovation requires risk. It requires the freedom to fail. The sources here argue that feminine psychology tends to prioritize safety and care, what psychologists call harm avoidance. And when you scale that up to an entire organization, you get safetyism. You get an environment where preventing harm, emotional or physical, is more important than taking the risks you need for a breakthrough.
And this is where the lone wolf problem comes in, right? I found this part of the notes absolutely fascinating.
Yes. The sources point out that high-performing innovators, they're often disagreeable. They don't care about social consensus. They care about their idea.
Right.
Now, in a masculine, results-oriented environment, that guy is tolerated, even celebrated, as long as he delivers the iPhone or the breakthrough drug.
Yeah.
But in a consensus-driven, feminized environment,
Mm-hmm.
that guy's a problem.
He disrupts the harmony.
Exactly. He makes people feel unsafe with his intensity or his erectness, so he gets marginalized. He gets pushed out. The system rejects the very person it needs to innovate because his personality doesn't fit the nice culture.
And the enforcer of all this is on slide 8. We see these two grinding gears. One gear is gold and it's labeled merit, and the other gear, which is gray and just jamming it up, is labeled HR department.
The expansion of human resources is described in the sources as the invisible engine of this whole shift.
Right.
HR is, by its very design, a system of ensuring agreeableness and safety.
Right.
It acts as the veto on masculine rough edges. It basically institutionalizes the feminine ethos.
There's a mention here of a source, Helen Andrews, discussing this in the context of universities and law firms. She talks about the telos of an institution.
That was a very sharp observation. She argues that institutions like universities and law firms have fundamentally changed their telos, their ultimate purpose.
Yeah, okay.
A university used to be about truth-seeking, which is adversarial, is often uncomfortable. You should be offended by new ideas sometimes. A law firm is about justice, which is a fight. But as these institutions have feminized, they've shifted toward being more therapeutic.
Therapeutic.
Meaning the goal becomes the well-being of the participants rather than the external objective. So if a law firm is more concerned with whether the junior associates feel nurtured than with winning the case,
The institution has lost its purpose.
it's lost its purpose. It's no longer a tool for justice. It's a nursery. It becomes a place for the people inside it rather than a service for the world outside it.
That is a heavy critique. But I want to zoom out a bit. We've been talking corporate culture, but slide 9 takes us to a national level. We need to talk about the Nordic problem.
Ah, yes. The gender equality paradox. This is one of those findings that really, really messes with people's assumptions.
So the assumption, the social role theory, is that as you make a society more equal, as you remove all the barriers holding women back, men and women will become more similar.
Right. Their career choices, their personalities, it should all just blend to 50-50.
Yeah, that's the theory. If you get rid of the patriarchy, women will code software and men will be nurses at equal rates.
But the data from the Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, which are the most gender-equal societies in human history, it shows the exact opposite.
The opposite.
As gender equality goes up, gender differences go up. In countries like Sweden, the differences in personality traits between men and women are larger than in less equal countries. And when it comes to careers, they are more segregated, not less.
I'm looking at the stats here. Sweden has fewer women in top management and entrepreneurship than the United States.
Right. And the U.S. doesn't even have statutory maternity leave. The explanation offered by the paradox is that when you remove economic necessity, when a woman doesn't have to become an engineer to feed her family because the state provides a strong safety net,
She's free to follow her innate preferences.
she is free to differ. Exactly. And those preferences, according to this data, they lean away from the hyper-competitive 80-hour-a-week corporate grind. The system tries to engineer a 50-50 outcome, assuming that's what women want. But when women are actually free to choose, they often choose people-oriented fields or part-time work, whereas men remain in thing-oriented fields and chase status. So the antithesis here is that biology is real, and you can't just socially engineer it away without coercion.
This connects to the cultural cost section. We have a source here on the feminization of Christianity. It seems like this isn't just happening in the boardroom.
It's a parallel phenomenon. The source notes that men are leaving the church in droves. Why? Because the environment has shifted almost entirely to nurture, safety, and relationships. The risk, the fight, the struggle, all those elements that traditionally appeal to masculine psychology, they've been sanded down.
It's the Jesus's boyfriend versus the Jesus's warrior dynamic.
In a way, if the institution doesn't offer a challenge or a call to adventure, but only offers comfort and safety, it loses the masculine demographic. And this brings us to the value conflict table on slide 9. This is really the philosophical core of the whole thing.
It is. On the left, under masculine agency, we have justice, rules, objectivity, task-oriented, freedom to fail. And on the right, under feminine stakeholder, empathy, care, subjectivity, process-oriented, safety protection.
And the crucial takeaway here is that these are trade-offs. You cannot maximize both columns at the same time. You cannot have perfect safety and perfect freedom. You can have total empathy and total objectivity.
Right. If I'm prioritizing your feelings, which is empathy, I might have to bend the rules, which is justice.
Exactly. And the critique we are exploring today is that our society has swung the pendulum so far toward that right column, towards
Yeah.
safety and empathy, that we are losing the capacity for the left column. We're losing the ability to challenge bad ideas because challenging them is mean. We're losing the ability to innovate because innovation is risky.
Which brings us to the final slide, slide 10. The image is a steel cable intertwined with a silk rope. It's titled The Performance Paradox.
And here is where we have to hold two thoughts in our heads at once. This is the synthesis.
Okay. Thought one, the financials.
The financials say go feminine. In a complex, networked global economy, the command and control dinosaur is dead. You need empathy, you need to develop talent, you need that plus 66% ROIC. That is real. You can't run a modern company like a 1950s factory.
And then thought two, the institutions.
The institutional critique says, be wary. If you go too far, if you let the stakeholder mentality completely override the core mission, you lose the ability to function. You become a therapy session instead of a business. You lose that swashbuckling spirit that built the skyscraper in the first place.
So it's not about choosing one or the other, it's about the tension.
It's about balance. But real balance, not just a quota. The danger identified in these sources is that we aren't balancing. We are tipping. We are tipping into a world where objective truth is subservient to emotional safety. And that makes us fragile.
And that leads to the final provocative thought from our expert source. It's a quote that's been sticking with me since I read this deck.
A society that cannot tolerate risk, conflict, or objective truth is a society that cannot survive in a competitive reality.
That's the lingering question, isn't it? We might be more comfortable, we might be safer, we might even be more profitable in the short term, but are we resilient?
That is the question. The invisible engine of gender is reshaping everything, and we need to decide if we are driving the engine or if the engine is driving us.
For everyone listening, take a look around your own workplace this week. When the pressure is on, are you optimizing for truth? Or are you optimizing for harmony? And what is the cost of that choice? Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.